the differences between the green card and the TN visa.
Okay. So, and technically from Canada, the people who are coming here on temporary work visas, it's not even a visa. Once you get the employer files for you and you get your petition approved, you come over the border. You don't have to go to the U.S. Embassy or consulate and get a visa the way you have to do for every other country. Okay. So it's even easier than a visa. But that permits you to stay in the U.S. for a period of 3 years. And then, of course, as long as you have a job, your employer can keep renewing that for 3 years at a time. And if you want to switch to another area of the country or to another employer, you can do that. But you have to kind of dance with the one who brung you. So, you know, if Hospital A sponsors you for a TN, and then maybe you get a better offer in a year from Hospital B, they also, you can't just start working there the next Monday. They also have to sponsor you for the TN. Okay. Now, the green card is permanent residence. So once you get the green card, you can stay forever in the U.S. It's your choice whether or not to become a U.S. citizen. So you can stay on the green card forever, or you can become a U.S. citizen. A TN, there's no specific limit on how many years, but I usually advise the TNs, if you're going to keep renewing it, eventually they'll deny it. So become a permanent resident if you like the U.S.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I see we have a question from Salia Sami, who's asking, how about Africa? So what I would assume then is that somebody coming from Africa the only choice that they would have would be to be on a green card, because they don't qualify for the TN visa, right?
If you're coming directly from an African country or an Asian country or really anywhere else in the world except Canada or Mexico, you have to come for the green card. Now, of course, you have the same option as anyone else to immigrate to Canada, to become a Canadian citizen. And if you do that, you can get a TN. But most of the nurses we've handled from Nigeria or Ghana and so on, we brought them directly on green cards.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit more about the difference in timeline, like with the TN visa as opposed to a green card?
Right. So, I mean, a TN visa, it may take you a few months to get that because there's certain requirements for a green card or a TN or an H-1B, no matter how you want to get a visa to come to the U.S. If you're a nurse, you must have something called the visa screen, where you show your education to an American company called CGFNS. It's the Commission on Graduates of Foreign Nursing Schools. And you also take an English exam. And when they certify that your education abroad is equivalent to that of a nurse in the United States, then they'll okay that. And you'll also need to pass the English test, and then you'll get this visa screen certificate.
Okay. So just to clarify though, for some people, if you were trained in English, you do not have to take the English exam. At Connetics, we have a licensing team that help our nurses that we place specifically through this process, because we know that it can be a little bit confusing and overwhelming. You know, often you would get a job and you don't know where to start. How does the TN work? How does the visa screen work? How does the IELTS, do I need the IELTS? Don't I need the IELTS? Should I take the IELTS, the TOEFL? There's so many questions that go through your mind at that point. So as Carl said, when you come through on the TN visa, you are going to need the visa screen certificate. And there are certain criteria, but we need to look at that on a case-by-case basis of exactly what would need to be required by each nurse. Because sometimes they don't need the English.
Right. And we do have, as I said, my wife's from the Philippines, and she calls herself the web widow, because for the last 20-something years, I have been adding page after page to our website. So we do have videos, and we have pages describing how to get licensed, how to get a visa screen, and links to the actual pages where you can apply.
Okay. In terms of the timing of getting the TN visa and the green card,
so the TN, if you have a license and you have a visa screen, I mean, we can literally get you a TN in a matter of weeks. Okay, it's very, very quick. to get a green card really depends on your country of birth. So the countries that have the backlogs are China, India, and the Philippines. China and India, huge backlogs, many years. The Philippine backlog is a little, I would say it will take you between 18 and 24 months if you're born in the Philippines to get a green card, if you're coming from out of the country. If you're in the US on a TN and you apply for the green card, there'll be an extra year added on because now all nurses and other employment-related green cards require an interview with the Immigration Service. And we're seeing a lot of complications in this administration. So I urge, any nurse who's trying to get a green card to have an attorney who's specialized in getting nurses green cards. And probably you want to have an attorney sitting with you at the interview because a lot of things are going on now that have not gone on in the 40 years that I've been practicing. The Trump administration is getting tougher on immigration than anything in the past. Let me go to the backlog countries, though. I mean, India right now, frankly, it's kind of a disaster. It probably take decades for somebody to get a green card through a job in India. They're in the employment-based third category, which is for professional, skilled, and unskilled workers.
Okay, but we did have a little bit of movement.
We did
today with the latest. We've got to celebrate the victories, Carl.
Okay. Well, I mean, yes, we have to put it in perspective.
Yeah.
So with the Philippine nurses, if you would have applied 3 or 4 years ago, the waiting time was between 6 and 8 years. Now it's come down. It came down to about 18 months. And the last couple of months, it's sort of gone up to 19 or 20 months.
It's kind of been holding for a few months.
It's a bit of a holding pattern.
But it has been coming down. And in fact, we're seeing a lot more activity from the Philippines. So there are a lot of people now that we've seen who are writing the NCLEX that hadn't written it before. We have many, many nurses who had applications before the retrogression. That had previous priority dates. So we might want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Is if you have had a previous priority date, so if you were sponsored before the retrogression and had an approved I-140, that would also mean that the processing time for the green card would be a little shorter, correct?
That is exactly correct. So inside immigration, we call it recapturing the priority date. So let's say somebody applied for you, an employer applied for you in 2011, but you never immigrated to the United States, and that job fell apart, and now somebody's applying for you in 2018. Well, you don't have a waiting time because you can use when the new employer files a new petition for you, they can ask for that old place in line, which we call the priority date. And you can apply, if you're in the U.S., you can apply for the green card, which we call adjustment of status, simultaneously at the same time. So that's really good. And I might mention, even though the Indian dates are kind of a disaster, they've moved up considerably in the July
There has been movement.
bulletin.
So we've got to hold on to the positives.
Exactly.
There has been movement. I always think of the priority date. Somebody once told me this analogy, and I thought it was a really good one, that it's kind of like standing in a deli. Like in an American deli where you take a number and then you're standing in line. So what happened is that at the retrogression years, people took a number, they were standing in line, and the deli got closed. So they couldn't get their food yet. They couldn't move ahead yet.
Okay.
But then now the deli's open again. So again, they can stand. They don't have to go to the back of the line. They now can still have a place further in the front.
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.